Daquan Montrose sat on the edge of an uncomfortable plastic chair in a Detroit clinic, fingering a crumpled piece of paper. His eyes scanned the words printed on the official form over and over again, but his brain refused to process them. HIV positive. The doctor said something about treatment, about how modern medicine allows people to live full lives. But Daquan was no longer listening. There was a strange buzzing in his ears, as if someone had turned on an old TV with no signal. "Mr. Montrose, do you understand what I'm saying?" The doctor leaned closer, his voice finally breaking through the fog in Daquan's head. "Yes, Doc, I hear you," Daquan nodded mechanically. "I just need time to process it." When he left the clinic, the world around him seemed unreal. Detroit was drenched in gray autumn rain, drops drumming on the hood of his old Ford, but Daquan didn't notice. He got behind the wheel and just stared out the wet windshield. How could this have happened? Daquan replayed the last few years of his life in his head. After breaking up with Shanquita Hendrickson 2 years ago, he hadn't been in a serious relationship. There had been casual flings, but he had always been careful. Or had he? His memories were jumbled, overlapping. Shanquita. Their turbulent relationship had lasted almost 4 years. They met at the Big Mo bar on the evening when Daquan was celebrating his promotion to senior mechanic at the auto repair shop. Shanquita worked as a hairdresser at a salon across the street and stopped in with her friends for a drink after work. She immediately noticed the tall guy with broad shoulders and a cheeky smile. Daquan also couldn't take his eyes off the girl with a mane of curly hair and an infectious laugh. That evening remained in his memory as a blurry spot of pleasure, music, drinks, dancing, and her dazzling smile. In the morning, he woke up in her apartment and realized he had found something special. The first 2 years were like a roller coaster. They would break up in a scandal, then make up passionately. Shanquita was fiery, with a temper that exploded like a firecracker at the slightest spark. But Daquan was no angel himself. Jealousy, outbursts of anger, loud arguments, it was all part of their relationship. The last 2 years had been calmer. They had even thought about a future together. Daquan was saving money for a ring and planning to propose. But then it all fell apart one rainy evening. "I can't do this anymore, Daquan," Shanquita said. "We're just going around in circles. I'm tired of these promises." "Baby, you know I'm working on myself." He tried to hug her, but she pulled away. "I've been hearing the same thing for 2 years. Your plans, your dreams of your own workshop. And what do you have? You're still hanging out in Big Tony's garage for peanuts. It's temporary, you know. Everything with you is temporary, Daquan," she almost shouted. "I want stability. I want a family, children, not these endless promises of a bright future." He remembered her last look, full of disappointment and exhaustion. The door slammed shut, and Shanquita disappeared from his life. Sitting in his car in front of the clinic, Daquan smiled bitterly. She wanted stability. Now he had stability. A stable diagnosis for the rest of his life. When his phone vibrated, Daquan flinched. It was Trevon, his partner from the auto shop. "Yo, bro, where are you? Big Tony's been asking for you twice." "I'm sick," Daquan replied curtly. "Tell him I'll be there tomorrow." "Are you okay? You sound weird." "Everything's fine." "We'll see how it goes. By the way, have you heard about Shanquita?" Daquan tensed up. "What about her?" "Nothing. She's getting married. To that construction worker, Jabari, I think. My old lady was at her salon yesterday and wouldn't stop talking about it. The wedding is in 2 weeks." The world around Daquan seemed to freeze. Shanquita was getting married. Right now, when he had just found out about his diagnosis, it was a cruel twist of fate. "Daquan, are you asleep?" "No. Thanks for the information. See you tomorrow." He hung up and started the car. Thoughts raced through his head. Shanquita, HIV, the wedding. It all twisted into a tight knot inside him, creating a feeling Daquan hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, unadulterated rage. When he got to his small apartment on the east side, the first thing Daquan did was get a bottle of whiskey. He wasn't a heavy drinker, but today he needed to numb the pain, to drown out the thoughts that stung like wasps. 3 glasses later, he couldn't think straight anymore. A whirlwind of fragmented images swirled in his head. Shanquita laughing at his jokes. Shanquita in his bed. Shanquita yelling at him during their last fight. And again, that ill-fated piece of paper with the diagnosis. What if it was her? What if she knew and didn't tell him? Or found out after they broke up and just didn't think it was necessary to warn him? Alcohol fueled his paranoia, turning vague suspicions into firm convictions. Daquan rummaged through the desk drawer and found an old photograph. It was of him and Shanquita on the beach at Lake Michigan. They were happy and smiling. He ran his finger over her face, and suddenly rage overwhelmed him with renewed force. He crumpled the photo and threw it against the wall. "Bitch!" Daquan hissed. "You're getting married, starting a new life. What about me? What am I supposed to do with this mess?" He grabbed his phone and started dialing her number, but stopped. No, not now. Not over the phone. He needed to see her face when he told her the truth, to see her reaction, to look into her eyes and know if she knew. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to decide what to do. Daquan leaned back on the couch and closed his eyes, feeling a dark, grim resolve grow inside him. While Daquan Montrose's life was falling apart at a Detroit clinic on the other side of town, Detective Lamar Jameson sat in his office sorting through papers for a current case. A 42-year-old Detroit police veteran, Jameson had a reputation as a stubborn and meticulous cop who didn't back down until he got to the bottom of a case. "Hey, Jameson!" His partner Randall Greers poked his head in the door. "Want some coffee?" "Make that aspirin," Lamar grumbled, rubbing his temples. "This migraine is going to kill me." "Didn't sleep again?" Randall entered the office and sat down on the edge of the desk. "Was Tilda calling again?" Lamar nodded grimly. His divorce proceedings had been dragging on for 2 years, turning into an exhausting war of attrition. The question of custody of their 13-year-old daughter, Nikia, was the stumbling block. Now she wants to move to Chicago. Take Nikia with her. She says she has a job lined up there. "And what does your lawyer say?" "That I work too much and don't spend enough time with my daughter," Lamar said with a bitter smile. "As if I could just drop everything and become a babysitter." "You could take that administrative position they offered you," Randall said. "Stable hours, no night calls. And die of boredom at a desk, shuffling papers? No thanks." Randall shrugged. "It's your call, so coffee?" "Sure," Lamar nodded. "And find me some aspirin. My head feels like a Metallica drum kit right now." When Randall left, Lamar leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. In addition to his personal problems, work was also keeping him on edge. There had been a series of robberies in the Midtown area, all with a similar modus operandi. The criminal was cunning and left no clues. 3 robberies in a month, and not a single lead. The phone on the table rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Detective Jameson," he answered wearily. "Lamar, this is Chandra from the lab," a female voice said. "I have the results on the fiber you found at the scene of the last robbery." Lamar sat up straight, instantly shaking off his fatigue. "What's it say? Synthetic? A specific blend? It's only used in one type of workwear. Coveralls made by Blue Collar Pro. They supply uniforms for industrial companies. Can we get a list of their clients?" "Already on it. They'll send it over today." "Chandra, you're a miracle," Lamar smiled for the first time that day. "If you ever decide to leave your husband, I'll be first in line." "Yeah, right, after all the crap I heard about your divorce? No thanks," Chandra laughed. "I'll send you the results as soon as I get them." Lamar hung up and stretched. Finally, a lead. Maybe he'd close this case faster than he thought, but his inner instinct, which had rarely failed him in 18 years of service, told him that there were no easy days ahead. Something was brewing in the air, a storm of some kind, and Lamar Jameson could feel it approaching with every fiber of his being. Randall returned with 2 cups of coffee and a pack of aspirin. "You look happy," he remarked, handing Lamar the medicine. "Something happen? Maybe luck is finally smiling on us." Lamar swallowed 2 pills and washed them down with hot coffee. Chandra found a lead on the robbery case. At that moment, the duty officer peeked into the office. "Detective Jameson, phone call for you. It's the school calling about your daughter." The smile disappeared from Lamar's face. "What else has happened?" "They didn't say, just asked me to call back urgently." Lamar sighed and reached for the phone again. It seemed his premonition had not failed him. There were definitely no easy days ahead. On the other side of town, Daquan Montrose, still drunk from whiskey and rage, made a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of many people around him, including Detective Lamar Jameson, who had no idea that this angry, cornered man even existed. The morning was clear and sunny, as if nature itself had blessed this day. Shanquita Hendrickson stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, looking at her reflection. The ivory wedding dress fit her slender figure perfectly. 2 months of strict dieting had not been in vain. She looked stunning. "Girl, you look like a goddess," her best friend Lakeisha exclaimed admiringly, adjusting her veil. "Jabari's jaw will drop when he sees you." Shanquita smiled, but a shadow of anxiety flashed across her eyes. This was her day, the day she had dreamed of since childhood. So why did she feel a strange sense of unease deep inside? "Are you sure you want this?" Lakeisha asked, noticing her mood. "It's not too late to run away. My car is full of gas and ready to make a run for Canada." Shanquita laughed, chasing away the dark thoughts. "Of course I want this. Jabari is the best thing that's happened to me in years. He's stable, reliable." "Boring," Lakeisha winked. "Admit it, he doesn't light that fire in you that Daquan did." The name of her ex made Shanquita flinch. "Lakeisha, we agreed not to mention that name today." She turned away toward the window. "Yes, Daquan was intense. But I don't want to live on a volcano anymore. I'm 30. It's time to settle down." "I understand," Lakeisha said, coming over and hugging her friend. "I just want to make sure you're doing this for yourself, not because it's the right thing to do." Shanquita squeezed her friend's hand. "I love Jabari, in my own way. Maybe not as passionately as—" She faltered. "But it's a mature, adult love. I feel safe with him." Lakeisha nodded, but her eyes betrayed her doubts. She knew Shanquita too well. They had been friends since elementary school and had been through all the ups and downs together. And Lakeisha could see that her friend's eyes weren't shining with the happiness that a bride's eyes should shine with on her wedding day. Shanquita's phone vibrated, interrupting their conversation. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "What's wrong?" Lakeisha asked. "Did Jabari change his mind?" "No." Shanquita shook her head. "It's a private number." She pressed the answer button and held the phone to her ear. "Hello?" There was a moment of silence, then a voice that took Shanquita's breath away. "Hey, baby, didn't expect to hear from me?" "Daquan?" She glanced at Lakeisha in panic. "Why are you calling?" There was a strange tone in his voice that Shanquita couldn't quite place, something between bitterness and anger. "I heard you're getting married. I wanted to congratulate you in person." "Thank you," she replied cautiously. "But now isn't the best time for—" "We need to talk, Shanquita," he interrupted. "There's something important you need to know before you say I do." Shanquita felt a chill run down her spine. "Daquan, I don't have time for games. The ceremony is in a few hours." 15 minutes, his voice sounded almost pleading. "Just 15 minutes of your life. Is that too much to ask after 4 years together?" Shanquita closed her eyes, fighting a sudden wave of weakness. Why today? Why couldn't he just leave her alone? "All right," she finally said. 15 minutes, but not here. Meet me at the cafe on the corner." "No," Daquan replied quickly. "Too many people. I'll drive to your house in half an hour. We'll talk at your place." Before Shanquita could object, he hung up. "Don't tell me you agreed to meet him today." Lakeisha stared at her with wide eyes. "I have no choice, Lucky," Shanquita sighed. "You know Daquan. If I refuse, he'll show up at the ceremony and cause a scene. Then I'll stay with you." "No," Shanquita shook her head firmly. "Go to the church and make sure everything is ready. I'll deal with Daquan." "But, please, Lucky, I need to do this myself. Close this chapter once and for all." Lakeisha reluctantly agreed, but gave her friend a big hug before leaving. "If anything happens, call me. I'll be right there with a bunch of my cousins. You know my family. They'll be happy to kick his ass." Shanquita laughed, feeling the tension ease a little. "Go on, and tell the hairdresser I'll be a little late." Left alone, Shanquita took off her wedding dress and put on a simple summer dress. She wasn't going to give Daquan even that small satisfaction of seeing her in her wedding gown. At that moment, Daquan Montrose was sitting in his car 2 blocks away from Shanquita's house, nervously tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. The last 2 weeks had passed in a blur. Every morning he woke up hoping that it was all just a nightmare, but reality was a harsh reminder: HIV. That diagnosis was now part of his life, his identity, his future. In the glove compartment was the gun he had bought 3 days ago from one of his shady acquaintances. A .38 caliber, with a worn handle, but fully functional. Daquan wasn't sure he would use it. He wasn't even sure why he had bought the gun. Maybe it was just to feel some kind of control over the situation. Shanquita. Once, that name had evoked warm feelings in him, but now it brought only bitterness and anger. She was about to start a new life, while his was effectively over. It was unfair. And somewhere deep down, Daquan was sure that she had infected him. Who else could it be? He couldn't remember any other woman with whom he had had such a serious and long-lasting relationship. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone. It was Trevon. "Yo, bro, where are you? Big Tony's freaking out. You haven't shown up for 3 days." "I quit," Daquan replied curtly. "Tell him." "What? Are you out of your mind? Where are you going to find another job, with your past?" Daquan smiled bitterly, his criminal record for car theft in his youth. Yes, it had always been a problem when looking for a decent job. But now it seemed so insignificant compared to what he had learned at the clinic. "I don't care about work anymore, Trev. I have other plans." "What kind of plans?" "Never mind. Take care." Daquan turned off his phone and looked at his watch again. It was time to go. He started the engine and slowly drove toward Shanquita's house. On the way, he went over the upcoming conversation in his head again and again. What would he say to her? "You ruined my life? I'm HIV positive because of you? Or just why?" Every phrase sounded like an accusation in his head. Every word was laced with venom. He parked near the old brick house where Shanquita lived. He knew every window in that building, every crack in the facade. How many times had he come here with flowers after they had argued? How many nights had he spent in her apartment on the 3rd floor? And now he was sitting here, a stranger, with a gun in the glove compartment and darkness in his heart. Daquan took a deep breath and got out of the car. With every step toward the entrance, his resolve grew stronger. He was sure that Shanquita had to pay, for his illness, for her impending happiness, for leaving him 2 years ago without looking back. The familiar smell greeted him in the hallway, a mixture of old wood, cooking, and cheap air freshener. Daquan climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and stopped in front of door number 304. He used to have a key to this apartment. Now he had to press the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, as if Shanquita was standing behind it, waiting for him to arrive. She looked different from how he remembered her, more well-groomed, with a new hairstyle. Her dress accentuated her figure. She was beautiful, and that fueled his anger even more. "Hi, Daquan." Her voice sounded tense. "Come in." He crossed the threshold, feeling his pulse quicken. The apartment had changed, too. New curtains, different furniture in the living room. All traces of his presence had been erased. It was as if those 4 years had never existed. "You look good," he said, trying to hide the bitterness in his voice. "Thanks," Shanquita said, nervously adjusting a strand of hair. "I don't have much time, Daquan. What did you want to talk about?" He walked into the living room, feeling his hands tremble. The gun he had taken from the glove compartment was pulling at his jacket pocket. Just to be on the safe side, he told himself. Just to feel strong. "I heard you're getting married," he began, turning to her. "To some construction worker." "To Jabari," she nodded. "He's a good man, Daquan." "And I was a bad one, huh?" he said with a bitter smile. Shanquita sighed. "We just weren't right for each other. I thought you understood that." "Yeah, right," Daquan said, feeling anger rising from deep within him. "So incompatible that you decided to leave me a parting gift?" Shanquita frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Daquan took a step toward her, his eyes darkening with rage. "Your little surprise! The fact that you infected me with HIV, Shanquita!" She stepped back, her face expressing genuine astonishment. "What? What are you? Daquan, I don't understand!" "Don't play innocent!" he almost shouted. "I know it was you. Who else could it be? I have the test results, damn it! I'm dying and you're getting married!" Shankita turned pale, her hands trembling. "Daquan, I swear I didn't know. I don't have HIV. I get tested regularly. The last time was 3 months ago." "You're lying." He grabbed her by the shoulders, feeling darkness completely engulf his mind. "You've always been a damn liar. All these years you've been deceiving me." Shanquita tried to break free from his grip, her eyes filled with fear. "Let me go! You're not yourself! I'll call the police!" Daquan loosened his grip, but did not let her go. Images of their life together flashed through his mind, mingling with dark thoughts about the future. About how the disease would slowly destroy his body. About how he would never be able to have a normal family. About how Shanquita would live her happy life with this Jabari, maybe even have children with him. His hand involuntarily reached for his pocket. "You ruined my life," he whispered, pulling out the gun. "And now you're going to start yours as if nothing happened." Shanquita's eyes widened in horror when she saw the weapon. "Daquan, no, please, I swear I didn't know. Let's talk, we can take the test together, I'll help you." But Daquan couldn't hear her anymore. His vision was red and his ears were ringing. He looked at the woman he had once loved more than life itself and saw only the source of his suffering, the reason for his curse. "I loved you," his voice trembled. "I would have done anything for you, and you just left me. You left me for another man, and you left me this." "Daquan, please put the gun down," Shanquita cried, trying to get through to him. "Think about what you're doing. You're not a murderer." "It doesn't matter who I am now," he replied with frightening calm. "My life is already over." The sound of the gunshot rang out unexpectedly loud in the small apartment. Shanquita gasped, her eyes widening in a final expression of shock and incomprehension. Then she slowly sank to the floor, clutching her chest where a red stain was spreading. Daquan stood over her, still holding the smoking gun. He expected to feel satisfaction, relief. Instead, he was overcome by a wave of horror at the realization of what he had just done. Shanquita looked at him, her eyes gradually losing focus. "Why?" she whispered, and it was her last question. Daquan stepped back, realizing there was no turning back. He had killed a man. He had become what he had always sworn never to become, a criminal, like his father. Sirens could be heard in the distance. Perhaps the neighbors had called the police after hearing the gunshot. He didn't have much time. Daquan took one last look at Shanquita, lying on the floor in a pool of blood, and rushed to the door. He couldn't go out through the stairwell. Someone might see him there. There was only one way out, the fire escape. He threw open the bedroom window and climbed out onto the metal structure. The cold wind hit his face, sobering him up. Daquan began to climb down quickly, jumping over several steps. His heart was pounding, adrenaline rushing through his veins. He didn't know that in the house across the street, on the second floor, a small surveillance camera installed just a week ago was watching his escape. The camera had been installed by Kwame Devontre to keep an eye on his 16-year-old daughter's suitors, a camera that recorded every movement of Daquan, his face contorted with panic, and the gun he was still clutching in his hand. Daquan Montrose reached the ground and rushed to his car without looking back. He didn't know that he had just left behind not only the body of the woman he once loved, but also irrefutable evidence of his guilt. Lamar Jameson arrived at the scene 20 minutes after receiving the call. Police cars and ambulances were already parked near the old brick house. Curious neighbors crowded behind the yellow tape, whispering and filming the scene on their phones. "What do we have here?" Lamar asked the patrol officer blocking the entrance to the building. "Murder, sir. A woman, about 30 years old, gunshot wound to the chest, apartment 304. Lamar nodded and began to climb the stairs. The air was filled with the distinctive smell of gunpowder mixed with the metallic scent of blood. In 17 years of service, he had grown accustomed to these smells, but they still filled him with quiet rage. Forensic technicians were already at work in the apartment, photographing and collecting evidence. The victim's body was still lying on the living room floor. Lamar approached, examining the face of the murdered woman. Even in death, she retained a strange beauty, despite the horror frozen in her eyes. "Shanquita Hendrickson," said forensic scientist Chandra, handing Lamar the victim's ID. 30 years old. According to neighbors, she was supposed to get married today. Jameson shook his head. Has the groom been notified? Officers are on their way. The ceremony was supposed to start in 2 hours. Lamar looked around the room again. There were no signs of a struggle. Nothing appeared to be missing, as far as he could tell from his initial inspection. The front door had not been forced open. She knew her killer, he concluded. She let him in. The neighbor on the first floor says she saw a man coming up here about half an hour before the shot, Randall said, appearing in the doorway. She says she used to see him here often, but not in recent years. Description: tall, thin, dark jacket. Ex-boyfriend? Lamar suggested. Possibly. Another interesting detail. The neighbor claims she heard them arguing, something about HIV. Lamar frowned. HIV? Are you sure? She quoted him verbatim. You gave me HIV, Shanquita. Then the shot. A scenario began to form in Lamar's mind. An ex-boyfriend, who had just found out about his diagnosis, was accusing his ex-girlfriend, who was about to marry someone else. A classic story of jealousy and revenge. We need to find him, and fast, Lamar said. Chandra, as soon as you're done here, send the DNA samples to the lab. Top priority. Will do, she nodded. By the way, there are fingerprints on the window frame in the bedroom. Looks like he left through the fire escape. Lamar headed for the bedroom. The open window overlooked an old metal staircase leading down to the courtyard, a classic escape route in old Detroit houses. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a movement in the window of the house across the street. An elderly man was clearly watching what was happening, making no attempt to hide his interest. Rendell, Lamar called out. See that man in the window? Go talk to him. He may have seen something. While his partner headed for the neighboring house, Lamar continued to search the apartment. The bedroom was filled with signs of wedding preparations. A white dress hung neatly on the closet door. Cosmetics were laid out on the dressing table, and a veil hung from a chair. A life cut short on the threshold of a new chapter. On the dresser was a framed photograph of a smiling Shanquita in the arms of a strong, dark-skinned man. Judging by the look on their faces, he was the groom. They looked happy. Lamar sighed. How many times had he seen such happy photographs in the homes of crime victims? For him, they were always the most painful reminder of the fragility of human happiness. Rendell returned 15 minutes later, his usually impassive face betraying barely contained excitement. Lamar, you won't believe it, he said, approaching his partner. That man, his name is Kwame Devontre, has installed a surveillance camera on his window. He says his daughter recently started dating a guy, and he wanted to make sure he wasn't climbing up the fire escape to get to her. Lamar straightened up instantly. Was the camera on? It runs 24/7 with a motion sensor, and it recorded everything. Our guy coming down the ladder with a gun in his hand after the shot. Damn, Lamar exhaled. This could be our golden ticket. Is he willing to hand over the footage? I already copied it to a flash drive, Randall patted his pocket. And that's not all. He identified the guy. He says it's Dakwang Montrose, a former Shankwitty. They dated for a few years, then broke up. According to Kwame, the guy always had a bad temper. Lamar felt his pulse quicken. They rarely got such serious evidence so quickly. Let's go to the station. We need to watch the recording and run this Dakwang through the database. At the police station, they immediately loaded the video from Kwame's flash drive. The footage was surprisingly clear for an amateur surveillance camera. It clearly showed a man climbing down a fire escape. His face turned directly toward the camera for a few seconds as he looked around. There it is. Lamar paused the video, pointing at the screen. Perfect for identification. Randall, run it through the facial recognition system. While the computer processed the request, Lamar studied the victim's file, which had been compiled by officers Shanquita Hendrickson, 30 years old, worked as a hairdresser at Curly Kate's salon 3 blocks from the house. No problems with the law, clean credit history. Fiancé, Jabari Layton, 32 years old, construction foreman, also no criminal record. The computer beeped, finding a match. Got it. Randall turned the monitor toward Lamar. Dakwang Montrose, 35 years old, convicted of car theft 10 years ago. After his release, as far as we can tell, he lived quietly. Worked as a mechanic for a guy named Big Tony on the east side. Address? Curtis Street, number 43, apartment 2. Lamar stood up. Get a team together. Let's go get him. Do you think he'll go home? Asked Randall. Most killers in this situation flee the city. Not necessarily. Lamar shook his head. If this was a crime of passion and revenge rather than a cold-blooded murder, he may be in shock from what he's done. Those guys usually don't have an escape plan. Plus, judging by the video, he didn't know about the camera. He might think he got away clean. Just in case, they sent out a description to all patrol cars and border checkpoints, with a photo of Daquan and a description of his car. The arrest team arrived at Montrose's address at 5:05 p.m. It was a dilapidated apartment building typical of Detroit's poor neighborhoods. Lamar and Randall, with their weapons at the ready, went up to the second floor accompanied by 4 SWAT officers. "Detroit police! Daquan Montrose, open the door!" Lamar shouted, banging loudly on the door of apartment number 2. There was no answer. After a third warning, Lamar nodded to the Special Forces officers, and they broke down the door. The apartment was empty. What's more, it looked as if the owner had left in a hurry. Drawers pulled out, clothes scattered about, closets open. On the table was a half-empty bottle of whiskey and an ashtray full of cigarette butts. He realized we were looking for him, Randall concluded, surveying the mess. He took the essentials and left. Lamar nodded, feeling disappointed. He had hoped for a quick arrest. Now they were in for a long hunt. "Leave a couple of officers here in case he returns," he told Randall, "and have the forensic team check the apartment. We may find additional clues." They began a methodical search for Daquan Montrose. They checked his former place of work, Big Tony's auto repair shop, where they learned that Daquan hadn't shown up for work in almost a week and had effectively quit. They questioned his neighbors, who couldn't provide any useful information. They checked all known contacts from the suspect's phone, found in the Detroit police database. In the criminal's apartment, detectives found several interesting clues. First, a crumpled printout of a medical report with a positive HIV test result. Second, a torn photo of Daquan and Shanquita. And third, most importantly, a note scribbled in shaky handwriting on the back of an electricity bill. "She'll pay for this." By evening, Lamar had a complete picture of the motive for the crime. Daquan Montrose, upon learning of his HIV-positive status, decided that he had been infected by his ex-girlfriend. The news of her upcoming wedding was the last straw. He decided to take revenge by depriving her of her future, just as he believed she had deprived him of his. A classic story. Randall sighed as they discussed the case in Lamar's office. It's easier to blame someone else for your problems than to take responsibility. The question is, where is he now? Lamar tapped his pencil on the table. Does he have any relatives in other cities? His father died in prison 5 years ago. His mother lives in Cleveland, but they haven't spoken since he turned 18. Cleveland, Lamar said thoughtfully. Only a few hours away, and not the most obvious destination for a fugitive from Detroit. You think he went there? It's worth checking. Contact the Cleveland police, send them his photo and description, and check the buses and trains going in that direction. Lamar was confident they would find Daquan. Sooner or later, all criminals make a mistake, and they already had the most important thing, irrefutable proof of his guilt in the form of a video recording. The night passed without results, but the next morning brought the first breakthrough. Daquana's car was found abandoned in a parking lot at the bus station. The transport company confirmed that a ticket to Cleveland had been sold the previous evening to a man matching the suspect's description. Lamar immediately contacted the Cleveland police, who quickly organized surveillance of Daquan's mother's house. By lunchtime, it was clear that their hunch was correct. Neighbors had seen a man resembling Montrose arrive at the house early that morning. "Set up surveillance," Lamar instructed his colleagues in Cleveland by phone. "We're on our way. Don't do anything until we get there." "Why don't you let them take him now?" Randall asked as they got into the car. "Because I want to see his face when we show him the camera footage," Lamar replied. "I want him to understand that he was betrayed by the most ridiculous thing imaginable. A camera installed by a caring father to keep an eye on his teenage daughter." The drive to Cleveland took almost 3 hours. All the while, Lamar was thinking about the upcoming interrogation. He wanted to understand whether Daquan really believed that Shanquita had infected him with HIV, or if it was just an excuse for revenge for a broken heart. Cleveland police met them at their station and reported that the target was still at his mother's house. "No suspicious activity," reported the local police sergeant. "It looks like he doesn't know we found him." The plan was simple. Surround the house and ask Daquan to surrender voluntarily. If he refused, use force, but avoid bloodshed if possible. When they pulled up to the quiet street where Daquan's mother lived, the sergeant pointed to a small one-story house with faded curtains. "That's the one. According to our information, only the suspect and his mother, Verita Montrose, 62 years old, are inside." Lamar looked at the house and sighed. Another family destroyed by crime. A mother who would lose her son just as she had lost her husband. "Secure the perimeter," he ordered. "I'll try to talk to him." Approaching the door, Lamar knocked firmly. "Detroit police. Daquan Montrose, we know you're in there. Come out with your hands up." There was movement inside the house. Then the door slowly opened. An elderly woman with a tired face and dull eyes stood in the doorway. "He knew you were coming," she said quietly. "He's waiting for you in the living room." Lamar motioned for Randall to follow him and cautiously entered the house. In the small, neatly tidied living room, Daquan Montrose sat on the sofa. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes red as if from crying for a long time. "Daquan Montrose," Lamar began formally, his hand on his holster, "you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Shanquita Hendrickson." Daquan slowly raised his head. "I know," he said in a colorless voice. "I'll tell you everything. Just let me say goodbye to my mother." Lamar nodded. In situations like this, he always tried to remain humane. "You have 2 minutes." As they led Daquan away in handcuffs toward the police car, Lamar noticed him pause and look up at the sky, as if saying goodbye to his freedom. "Why did you give up without a fight?" Lamar asked, once they were in the car. Daquan turned his face toward him, his expression frozen in endless exhaustion. "Because I'm already dead, detective," he replied. "HIV, prison. What's the difference? My life ended the moment I got the test results." "Are you sure it was Shanquita who infected you?" Lamar watched his reaction closely. Daquan lowered his eyes. I don't know. She was just the only woman I ever had a serious relationship with. With the others, I was always careful." "You know that even if that were true," Lamar said slowly, "it doesn't justify murder?" "I know." Daquan looked up again, and Lamar saw tears in his eyes. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking rationally. I just wanted her to feel the same way I did, that her life was ruined. And now I realize what I've done. The drive back to Detroit was silent. Daquan sat staring out the window, lost in thought. Lamar thought about the senselessness of this crime, about a life cut short on the brink of happiness, about families destroyed by one insane act. At the Detroit police station, Daquan was formally charged with first-degree murder. During questioning, he confessed everything without the slightest resistance. When Lamar showed him the video recording from Kwame Devontray's camera, Daquan just smiled bitterly. "Damn irony," he muttered. "I always told Shankwhite that we were being watched. She laughed. Turns out I was right." That same evening, the prosecutor signed the indictment. Given the confession and irrefutable evidence, the trial promised to be short. Lamar Jameson stayed late at the station, finishing up paperwork. The case was solved, the criminal caught, justice served. So why did he feel so empty inside? Before leaving, he looked through the case files once more. The photo of a happy Shanquita with her fiancé. The camera footage of Daquan frantically climbing down the fire escape. The medical report confirming HIV. All these fragments came together to form a picture of a tragedy that could have been avoided if only Daquan hadn't given in to anger and despair. If only he had talked to the doctors about his suspicions. If only he hadn't blamed others for his misfortune. Closing the case file, Lamar thought about how often people ruin their lives because of their inability to accept reality. How easy it is to blame someone else for one's own misfortunes. How quickly anger can turn into irreparable tragedy. And how a single surveillance camera, installed by a father worried about his daughter, could uncover a crime and change a person's fate forever.